Folks, welcome. My name is Jeff Richardson. I'm the County Executive for Albemarle County Government. Thank you very much for taking an opportunity to come out on a Thursday evening. This is the county government's second budget town hall. We had our first one earlier this week on Tuesday evening. Then we had a budget work session yesterday afternoon as part of our normal meeting. And this is our second town hall. I believe we have a total of 7 town halls that are scheduled. Tonight, it is different. It's a different town hall. So in addition to welcoming the citizens and community members that are here this evening to join us, we are also live streaming tonight's town hall. And so for those who are joining us tonight through the live stream, thank you very much for taking an opportunity to be here. We will take tonight's town hall and we will post it on our website. And so not only is this different in the sense that it is live stream, but also it will be posted on our website in hopes that we're able to get as much information out to the community as possible. I have 2 board members here with me this evening that I'll introduce in just a few minutes. But I have a number of staff here. We started this evening at 5:30. This is the footprint that we're using for all of our town halls. I have a number of department, outward-facing and inward-facing departments who are here tonight. And Serena, I'm going to ask you, please, if you would go around the room, and I want the staff, please, to introduce themselves, tell me who you are and where you work. I want the community to know who is here tonight. And when we wrap up at 7:30, if you didn't get a question answered and you need to see someone, we'll stay behind and make sure that we answer your question. Serena, go. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Laura Andrake. I work in the Department of Finance and Budget.
That's it. Good evening, Jacob Sumner, Chief Financial Officer, Finance and Budget.
Good evening, I'm Ann Wall, and I serve as Deputy County Executive.
Hello, Kaki Dimick, Chief Human Services Officer.
Mary Stebbins, Director of the Department of Social Services.
Stephanie Terry of Elmo Social Services.
I'm Rob Ellis. I'm the Senior Medicaid Worker at Albemarle Department of Social Services.
Bush. Bart Svoboda, Deputy Director, Community Development.
Good evening, I'm Betty Slough. I'm the Deputy Building Official in Community Development.
Good evening, everyone. Jody Filardo, Community Development Director.
Hello, Amy Smith, Deputy Director of Parks and Recreation.
Good evening, Bob Krickenberger. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation.
Good evening, everyone. Shaquille Reynolds, Housing Programs Coordinator for the Office of Housing.
Good evening, Alyssa Mazzoni. I'm the Chief of Staff for Fire Rescue.
I'm Heather Childress. I'm a Deputy Chief with Fire Rescue.
David Puckett, another Deputy Chief of Fire Rescue.
Emily Pleach, Fire Rescue.
Good evening, John O'Prandy, Emergency Management Coordinator for the Department of Fire Rescue in the county.
Good evening, Jesse Perkins, Director for Equity and Inclusion.
Hey everybody, I'm JT Newberry with the Economic Development Office.
I feel like I'm running with the Olympic torch.
Good evening, I'm Bill Strahler, Chief of Facilities and Operations for Facilities and Environmental Services.
Brian Helmsmeyer, Water Resources Program Manager for Environmental Services.
Hello everyone, it's Tim Pavolino, Chief of Parks Planning, Parks and Recreation.
Good evening everyone, Roderick Burton, I'm the Director of Information Technology.
Hello, I'm Audrey Storm, Senior Project Manager with Facilities Planning and Construction.
Good evening, I'm Jeffrey Dumars, the Director of Facilities and Environmental Services.
Good evening, I'm Augusta Gauchon. I'm with the Broadband Accessibility and Affordability Office.
Good evening, I'm Thomas Unsworth. I'm an analyst with the Office of Management and Budget.
Good evening, Andy Bowman, Assistant Chief Financial Officer.
And I'm Serena Guria, representing Communications and Public Engagement, along with my amazing team all around us.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Serena, thank you for taking the time to run through the room to show our folks who are here tonight, our staff that's represented. And we're going to do this at every town hall. We've got the pop-up department displays that's in the adjoining room, talking a little bit more about what we do as a county government. County government does a lot of stuff. We do a lot of stuff. And so tonight, as we roll the budget out and answer your questions, one of the things we want to do is to give you a little bit more of a closer look at our budget and the things that we do. And I'd also like to thank our partners, Spectrum, tonight. They're helping us to go live stream. And again, welcome the folks who are joining us live stream. So let's get started. I'd like to first recognize on the slide the 6 board members that make up the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors. And the supervisors that are with us this evening are first Jim Andrews. Jim is the chair of the board, and he's from the Samuel Miller District. And also Mike Pruitt, who is with us this evening. He's in the Scottsville District. And we will be moving through the county for 7 town halls, and all of the Board of Supervisors at one point will be joining us for these town halls to participate and answer questions. I'm going to run through some slides that gives you an overview of the budget and what we're talking about for this year. Then we're going to turn it over to Serena. Serena's going to facilitate questions and answers, and we're going to try to wrap up around 7:30 and make sure we get your questions answered. And then if we need to stay behind and visit with you for something specific, we're happy to do that. So let's get started. So we are in the middle of the budget process, and we've been working, a lot of the people in this room have been working since fall of last year on the budget process to get us to where we are today. Before we dive into the details of the budget, I just want to start out by saying that I think the community, oftentimes when they're thinking of local government, they think of local government through one of 3 lenses. The first is economic vibrancy. The second is customer service. The third is quality of life. The first lens, economic vibrancy, is really what is the health and the strength of the community's economy. That's really what that's about. And you think about that in different ways. It could be the job opportunities that are in our community. It could be the types of businesses and the vibrancy with those businesses and the offerings in our community. It could be the business climate and business environment that's inside of our community. There's a lot of things that make up economic vibrancy, but that's one of the lenses that people in the community typically look at local government through, and they're looking for local government to make a difference in that way. The second is service delivery, and that's really a straightforward lens that talks about when a citizen needs something or thinks local government is who they need to go to get it from. They're thinking about, I need this, and I need to connect to local government, and they need to give me back what I need. That's that service delivery component. That involves our people, that involves our processes, our systems, our resources, our policies, our business systems, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes because that involves business modernization, and our training and development of our people. It's our commitment to our people. And you may say, what does that have to do with customer service and service delivery? It has to do with our ability to recruit, our ability to retain, our ability to put processes in place that make sense. Finally, we talk about the quality of life lens. And I like really focusing on that. And I've got another slide I'm going to show you with that. But Serena could go around the room if we had time as a warm-up exercise, basically to say, when you think of quality of life in this community, what comes to the forefront of your mind? And for the citizens, community members that are here tonight, you're going to hear a lot of different stuff. And that's the quality of life lens. It's subjective. It's a big lens. It's everything from recreation, good schools, walkable communities, open space, good jobs, commute time to work, low traffic, low crime, lots of parks, lots of amenities, things to do, great restaurants, and the list goes on and on. In fact, Serena put this together, and this is not from any one particular meeting or community event we've been to, but it's just out there when people talk about quality of life, and you should be there right now going, and where's my thing I'm looking for? And sometimes it's more than one thing. Here's the message, though, that I would give. Local government, I said earlier, they do a lot of stuff. But in the work that we do, we always, with the opportunities and the problems that we face in the community, we always run out of money and resources before we run out of the list of things that people need us to address. It's just how local government works. So it's so important that our board works judiciously with the staff, and they do, as we set a 5-year strategic plan, that's lined up with our 5-year financial planning, that's tied into our 5-year capital improvement planning, and all of that is connected in a meaningful way to our long vision document, which is our comprehensive plan. This is, in fact, our strategic plan currently. We're in year 3 of a 5-year plan. And you can see from this that there are 6 goals. Workforce and customer service is the anchor. It's in the middle. And these really are the 5 goals that work around workforce and customer service. The board had the idea of, we want you to show the workforce as the foundation to our strategic plan. Our board is very supportive of our workforce, and we've got an excellent workforce, and they get this work done every day. They make a decision to be in public service, and they get it done. I'm going to primarily tonight talk about the things that what I call the budget drivers, and it is our workforce and commitment to customer service, our safety and well-being, and then our commitment to the Albemarle County Public School System, education, and learning. Those really are the cost drivers that are in this year's budget. Before I dive into the details, though, I'm going to show you a slide that our board is probably getting a little bit tired of looking at, because this slide really keeps in the forefront of our board's mind that we do multi-year budgeting. We are going to adopt a fiscal year 26 budget, but in the middle of adopting a fiscal year 26 budget, we're already looking at what are the obligations that we need to plan for in fiscal year 27, even into fiscal year 28. But you can see on this slide's been in front of the board for really, this is probably the 3rd year, and we're going to go back and look at fiscal year 24, which was really 2 years ago, where we were looking at the capital and operational planning to build and open 3 new schools in Albemarle County after not building any new schools for 20 years. We've renovated, we've expanded, we've updated, we've put a lot of capital improvement into the school system, but we've not built new schools. And we've reached that point over the last 5 years where the tipping point with space and capacity to commit to 3 new schools. Along with that, we were also looking at building a new court set downtown. We were looking at having to make investments into our regional jail, where it's a regional partnership, and in addition to other things. And so we began to look in this 23-24 time frame, saying we got a lot of debt obligations that are coming, and we're going to need to plan for that. In addition to that, and I'll talk about it in a minute, we also were working in fire and rescue, our fire rescue department, with a decline in volunteer firefighters in our county. We have 11 fire stations in our county, and really our fire department's been working through that really probably for about the last 10 years, and it's a national trend of a decline in volunteerism, and that's had a really big effect on our budget. As we go to FY27, which is a year from now, if you come to one of these next year, you'll probably hear us talking about the cost associated with opening 2 of the 3 new schools. You'll probably hear us talk about the continued eye that we have on state funding for our school system, as well as collective bargaining. They will be into year 1 of that. We have a revenue sharing agreement with the city. We have key partner agency agreements where we partner to hold the costs down, but the costs still go up. The FEMA SAFER grants, and then finally we're continuing to keep an eye on federal funding, because the budget is about 3% federal funding in the county's budget. That's about $9-10 million, and we're continuing to watch as things evolve in Washington. Okay? So I want to talk just for a minute about the multi-year process that we go through, multi-year budgeting process. We are required by state law to balance the budget. I'm required by the state law to balance the budget, and I'll show you in a minute that it is balanced, recommended. The board has received the recommended budget. They've got work to do before they pass the budget. I want for you to pay attention, though, in this coming year, expended expenses, and this is obligations over revenue, and that we were working on this gap since last summer, and it's about just a little over 3%. And so we started this year with that gap of 3%, which is about $13 million, and we were working through a process of trying to strategize how might we be able to meet our obligations, do the things we have to do with an eye on service delivery, and then balance the budget in front of the board. And again, the obligations really started in FY21, going through 24 and into this year. So the recommended budget, you may know this already, has a recommended 4-cent tax rate increase in it. And so our current tax rate is 85.4 cents per $100 of assessed value. And I do have a 4-cent tax rate increase recommended, as well as moving the personal property tax rate back to $4.28 per $100 of valuation. And that was the rate that it was at prior to COVID. During COVID, used cars started going up. They started appreciating in value. Our board was very concerned about that. And as a result, we found a way to lower this through COVID. And then after the car market balanced out, we've looked at putting it back to the $4.28. The two bottom revenues, the percentages are recommended for no change. Now, the 4-cent tax rate. Why, Jeff? Why did you do a recommended 4-cent tax rate increase? Well, you'll hear me talk more in detail in a few minutes, but 80% of this tax rate, 3.2 cents, is earmarked and dedicated to public safety, police and fire. In 2021, we started pulling down through competitive grant process. We started pulling down federal SAFER grant money, FEMA SAFER grant money that gives local communities money on the front end to hire firefighters, to put them into the stations as the volunteerism continued to decline. Our volunteer departments were formally, in some cases, reaching to us and saying, we need your help. We can no longer provide 24/7, 365. And so we began a process where we, in succession, went after 4 grants over a 5-year period, and we were successful in all 4 grants. And we hired 57 positions in fire and rescue. That allowed us to maintain services. That's where 3.2 of the 4 cents goes, because that federal money goes away. The feds give you that money on the front end to be able to stabilize what you're losing and what the service decline could be. And then over about a 4-year period, that money will begin to back out, and you've got to replenish that money with local money. The final 0.8 of a penny I've recommended to the board, and they're talking about this and had discussion on it yesterday, of dividing half of that, which is 0.4 of a penny, dedicated to schools. That would be on top of what we were already recommending to them, and I'll tell you the total in just a few minutes. And then finally, a dedicated 0.4 of a penny to affordable housing. You can see that 0.4 of a penny is $1.2 million a year if it's dedicated, in both cases to schools and affordable housing. And what that would do is give the board consideration for ongoing funding for our affordable housing initiatives, and then we've got some additional one-time money that's set aside for them to consider as well. But that, in essence, is where the 4 cents goes. I want to take a second and talk about our revenue diversification, really just to say just a couple of things, and that is the orange line here is other local revenue, and that has declined just a little bit since '03. The gray line is state and federal. I really want you to pay attention to that, because state and federal funding for local government has gone from just over 17% to 8%. So it's really gone down by half over the last 22 years. And then the blue line is probably where you folks see the most change. And the blue line is property taxes. And since 2003, at that time, of all the revenues, it was about 55% of the revenues. It's now grown to 68%. The board, when it reached 66%, which was between FY18 and FY23, they said, we really need to start looking at how we can diversify our tax base. We are concerned that we are over-reliant on the real estate property taxes. And I'll talk about that for a couple of minutes before I turn it over for questions. So really, 3 key takeaways from our revenue diversification. Federal and state revenue has reduced over time. We believe, and I do believe, that we have an over-reliance on real estate taxes in this community. The more broad your revenues are, the stronger your budget is, because you're less reliant on any one tax. in order to drive the services that we must provide the community. And then finally, a long-term diversification strategy, and I do want to take a couple of minutes to talk about that later. I did say that our budget is balanced. This is not our total budget. This is our general fund budget, and it's balanced with $480.5 million of revenue. And I only lean into the general fund because that's where all of the tax revenue is received. It's the primary funding for schools, capital, and debt, as well as local government operations. And it's where our Board of Supervisors have the most flexibility to move things around, is inside of that. And I would point out, as to what I say in a minute, 67% of the revenues coming in is general property taxes. Then, as citizens sometimes do, they will stop me and they'll say, where does my tax dollars go? And it's complicated, but there are some big blocks. And this is the expenditures, again, balanced at 480. And you can see that the transfer to schools is almost 50% of the total expenditures. So we are tied to the hip with our public school system. And we fund 72% of operations in our public school system. They pull down about 28% from state government. I want to talk more in detail about what this budget has in it, the specifics of it, if I can, please. And I want to start in public safety. I want to talk more specifically about fire rescue, because I really want you to understand where this tax money is going. We have 11 fire stations in this county. Since January 1, I just want to give you a piece of data. Since January 1, I looked this week, January 1 through March the 8th, 3,488 calls for service in fire rescue. I'll say it again. January through March the 8th, 3,488 calls for service in fire rescue in this community. Folks, that's a lot of calls for service. I visited with my folks tonight, and they just looked at me and they said, it's been a very busy week. And I didn't ask details. If I asked, they would have gave me details, but they've been hustling this week. So it's a lot of calls for service. Well, in 2021, the board said, let's have a strategy as the decline in volunteerism continues. We cannot decline in service delivery. So what are we going to do? How do we soften the blow to the general fund? And so we went after 4 grants, $12.7 million. It funded 57 positions that went to the front line in fire rescue. These are the people that are running these 3,488 calls for service every day. They're out there running these calls. And so this was not a service enhancement. This was a strategy to continue services with no service decline in this community. And calls for service have gone up steadily, both during COVID and after COVID. And that's the case for police and fire. The grants address volunteer shortages and increased demands for services. Now I'm going to stop there for a second, and I'm going to say, our volunteer fire departments are amazing. They've served this community for decades, and they have done amazing work. But think about it in 2025. All of you are here. You've got your stuff you do every week. Think about doing the stuff you do and volunteering for your local fire department and keeping up with all of the requirements for training, certification, just like a professional paid firefighter. It's very demanding. It's very difficult. Oftentimes people work too far away to be able to answer calls during the day. Our fire departments, our volunteer fire departments, while they do a good job, some have experienced difficulty answering calls at night, weekends, and some Monday through Friday daytime. And so this has looked a little different depending on where you are in the county. This slide really I won't stay with long, but I only want to hit that over the course of these grants that we've put additional resources in Pantops, Crozet, North Garden, Earlysville, Stony Point, Monticello, Scottsville, and then back again into North Garden. There's rural and urban needs in this county regarding fire service. And so much of the tax rate increase is devoted toward paying these grants back, and this is for ongoing services in our county. Finally, we are continuing to check the performance in fire and rescue, our ambulance performance, our fire engine performance. We have also in the past had a mutual aid agreement with the city and the county. We'll continue to have that. At one point in time, we're paying the city of Charlottesville over $100,000 a year for fire service delivery in the Pantops area, which is one of the most busiest areas in the county. And now we're to a point with staffing to where we're just at a no-cost mutual aid agreement. And then finally, we've had an increased emphasis in work in the area of emergency management, county-focused, and regionally engaged with our partners. So when I said 3,488 calls, it's listen to this: EMS, fire, motor vehicle rescue, hazmat, and then a category of other, which is just a variety of things. But our fire rescue department provides an amazing level of service in this community. In police, I want to talk about police because this is also where the tax rate increase is devoted to. I'm recommending 6 new positions in the police department in next year's budget. This will equate to 2 more officers per shift. We're going to see improved response times across the county. And then just as important to me is how quickly that second officer gets to the first when the officer needs assistance. We have 726 square miles in this county. Some of you have lived here your whole life, and you know this county like the back of your hand. In some places, you can drive over an hour to go from one end to the other. And when that first arriving officer gets there to assess, at times he's going to need backup. And the way we're positioned across the county with 2 additional officers per shift, all 6 of these positions are going to go into patrol. We're going to see an increased response times. This is the most positions that has been recommended for the department since 2016, and all 6 positions are devoted to patrol. I'll just show you a map of the county. The darker areas that are closer to the middle of the urban ring are our most dense areas. That is the Crozet area, but this is where the calls for service are the most busy, as you might guess. But as you can see, we've got coverage all through the county, and we've got to be able to cover and back up all around the county. So I am very excited about the opportunity, hopefully, to be able to get these 6 positions funded. Now I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to go out of public safety. And I'm going to talk for a couple of minutes about the important work that we do in community services. We have 55 programs funded that equal $36.2 million that's in the budget. And this money is critical to the access to vital services. First, nonprofit. Let's talk about nonprofit. The Human Services Funding Program prioritizes programs that serve the most vulnerable members of our community, including elderly, households with kids under 6, medically vulnerable individuals. So we have a variety of relationships across our community with the nonprofits that connect with us, and through our funding that we're able basically to get more done. 3 examples. We've got 25 programs that are supported. I'll just mention 3. Loaves and Fishes, where they provide emergency food to the community. Pacham, which provides emergency shelter to the community. And then the 3rd is the Ready Kids program, where they're doing mental health services for kids and teens. I also want to mention the Albemarle County regional agencies that we've got partnerships with. I mentioned earlier that we're in the process of renovating a jail that is a regional jail. You can see it from I-64, and it serves the region. It serves a number of counties and the city of Charlottesville. We're in the partnership, and next year we're going to take on capital debt associated with renovations to that jail, where that jail's not seen renovations in 50 years. And we desperately need to renovate that jail. Our operating funding, our part of the operating funding for the jail is $5.3 million. They're a critical partner. While I'm still on the track of public safety, the Emergency Communications Center, E911, we have a 3-party partnership, the city, the county, and the University of Virginia. And we've got to continue to enhance and invest in the modernization of our 911 services and systems. Next year, our total operating money from the county, $5.3 million. I'll also mention Ravenna Solid Waste Authority. They provide recycling, solid waste, household waste, disposal services. Our contribution there, $2.9 million. And then finally, our regional library, where we're in a partnership. Next year, our investment in our regional library system is just shy of $6 million. So this is just a small sampling of the partnerships that we've got across the community. Just like earlier, I was saying quality life means a lot of different things to you folks. Well, our regional reach out into the nonprofit and partner community, we do a lot of stuff with the help of a lot of community partners that by ourselves we would not be able to do. I'll talk for a minute about school funding. Some of you may be here tonight to learn more about that. I said earlier that they're our largest partner. That's where the majority of our tax money goes in Albemarle County. I'm recommending a $14.3 million increase in operational funding to schools next year. That's a 7.3% increase in funding to schools. In addition to that, we're in the process of finishing 2 of the first 3 schools. We've broken ground on the Southern Elementary Theater School, and so we're also preparing in FY27. We are preparing for us to have operational costs associated with opening those 2 new schools. Some of you may be here tonight to talk about affordable housing. I said earlier that we had 0.4 of a penny dedicated revenue. That's an ongoing revenue stream devoted to housing. If the board accepts that recommendation, it equals $1.2 million a year. I said we had some one-time funding also. That's $3 million. And so when you combine that next year, if the board adopts this budget, it'll be about $4.2 million of additional money that's waiting for affordable housing initiatives, okay? So we continue to invest in developer incentives and other incentives to expand affordable housing options in Albemarle County. But again, we can't do this alone. As it says at the bottom of the slide, we've invested over $17 million in the last 5 years. And so I know you can't see this, and it's not meant for you to see the details, but it is meant to show you the amount of commitment that we've had through the partnerships. It's a long list and a lot of activity over the last 5 years, trying to make a meaningful effort with the challenges in this community regarding affordable housing. So the next thing I want to talk about is climate action. Some of you may be here tonight to talk about that. And so next year, we're recommending $1.95 million of program funding for fiscal year 26, an increase in environmental services, and continue the work of our climate action program. So it's a lot of work. It's cross-departmental. We've got all of the departments in some way connected to this, and we're stretched with our dollars to do the best that we can do to make the differences that we do in the community. We believe that climate action and environmental sustainability are tied at the hip, and we do have a climate action plan. But we're doing a lot of work in the community. I'm not going to go through the list, but we're doing a lot of work through the departments into the community, trying to make a positive difference with our environment and our climate action work across Albemarle County. I want to take a second on economic development because I've mentioned several times tonight revenue diversification. So we're talking about diversification of the tax base. We're talking about lowering the burden on that real estate property tax as about 68% of the revenues that come in. In our Economic Development Fund, I'm recommending that we put an additional $1 million in there, and that's to develop and launch and help to update our soon-to-be updated Economic Development Strategic Plan. We're focused on growing target sectors and redevelopment partnerships. Let me give you an example. Who's been to Fashion Square Mall in the last year? Fashion Square Mall has been losing tax base value, and it's been steadily losing that since 2016. A little over a year ago, we partnered with Home Depot. They came in, they're going to clean the Sears site up. They're going to invest $26 million. They're going to bring in over 100 jobs. And we believe over the next 5 to 7 years, Home Depot as the anchor tenant could help to serve to revitalize that mall site, that Fashion Square Mall site. And I want to see that tax base go back in the other direction. That's an example of investment in our business and commercial part of the community to try to get better economic vibrancy out there and bring in stronger tax revenue. So we're investing also in Ravenna Futures. Most of you, if you follow the work of county government, you know that a little over a year ago, we bought 462 acres that surrounds Ravenna Station. It's up Rio 29 as you go toward Greene County. Ravenna Station has been there since around 2000. It employs 3,000 people. 2,700 work for the Department of Defense in intelligence. And we bought the acreage around that, and it is a long-term investment. I think it's work we'll be doing for the next 5 to 10 years for sure to try to attract private sector and public sector investment out there that would be good investment and really consistent with some of the mission that's going on out at Ravenna. Behind the University of Virginia, our military Department of Defense economy is number 2 in this region for the amount of economic vibrancy that it creates in this community. We want to continue that to happen. And so that investment in property sent a clear message to the state and federal government that we're serious about growing the footprint out there. We last week learned that we received a $700,000 state grant, very competitive grant, to do some design work out there. The state's very interested in helping us. This is a big part of the strategy to diversify and balance our tax base over time. Before I leave that, I also want to say that one more strategy as it relates to schools. You've heard a lot tonight about not just the operational needs of schools, but also the capital needs of schools. The General Assembly, for the second year in a row, is considering allowing communities to consider by voter referendum to consider a 1-cent sales tax for schools. And that would be devoted totally to capital. That would be an example if we had a 1-cent sales tax that was devoted to school capital in this community. If our voters were allowed to vote on that and vote it through, that would also serve to help balance some of the stress that's currently in our budget with our revenues and our needs in our community. So I'm hopeful that will continue to get favorable consideration. I want to talk a minute about our workforce, simply to say that I've got added into the budget next year a $3.5 million cost of living adjustment for our workforce. That is 3% to our workforce. We've seen a 24% increase in our healthcare rates, and that's both for the employer and for the employee. We're in a similar situation to most of local government across Virginia. That's a topic of discussion right now. And I will flag that one of the things that we've been working on that we've recently opened is a county health clinic for county workers and our covered lives. Us in schools together, about 3,600 employees. With the families that are also covered, it's about 6,200. We're way big enough to have a healthcare clinic to help us manage and control those healthcare costs. And that's the ribbon cutting that happened last month in February with both school board and our board of supervisors and our staff. This is a strategy that we're putting in place to help us manage healthcare and hold the costs down, but also emphasize to our people how important it is to stay healthy. I'm about wrapped up, and then we're going to turn it over to you and let you answer the questions, ask questions that you may have. But before we do, I get this question a lot, and that is, what are you doing to save money in the budget? Well, I told you earlier that we're going to recommend 6 new police officers. On the other side of the ledger, we are eliminating 11.7 positions that's recommended for being eliminated in the budget next year. So that's got a net effect of about almost 6 positions. So across county government, outside of police, we're losing almost 12 positions. We've committed to our board that we're going to continue to look for annual operational savings. In this year, we found $500,000. We've told the board we'll find $500,000 in fiscal year 26. That's part of our balancing the budget. And so we'll be able to show $1 million in cost savings between fiscal year 25 and 26. There's a variety of strategies that are in place to look for those cost savings, but I'd emphasize our investment in systems modernization. For better or worse, we are working with systems that we've had since the early 2000s. A joke in one of the departments is that we've got one system in the department that's older than one of our employees. We've got like a 22-year-old employee and a 24-year-old system. But if you've worked with technology that's over 20 years old, you know that it's not fast. It sometimes is labor intensive. It's not customer friendly. So we're putting a lot of investment in our systems modernization work, which is speeding us up. It's creating efficiencies. And as positions are vacant, we then look at the design of the work and whether or not we need that position to be refilled. So that's just a flavor of what's going on with our cost savings and our reengineering. Our CIP, our 5-year capital improvement plan, local government does a lot of stuff. And it's evident when you start looking at the capital investment that's across county government. This is for this 5 years that we're in currently. I won't take time to go through any of this, but if you have questions, we have people here tonight that can answer your questions. And as I wrap up, this is probably one of my favorite slides, and that is, this is a snapshot of what we do every day. It's what we do every day. These numbers are collected through our departments. I mentioned earlier, calls for service, police in the last year, they just released their annual report. They crossed 75,000 calls for service, fire rescue, 18,000, but it's a lot more than public safety. Social services gave out over $219 million of benefits and services to families in the county, and on and on. It's a lot of stuff that we do in this county to try to make it a better place to work and a better place to live. So I'm going to ask Serena to get up, and as I do, I'm going to also invite you to click on this and dive deeper into our annual SPEAR report. If you're like, that's really not a lot of data on what you do, Jeff, I'd really like to know more about what do you do? What does county government do? Click on there, and it'll take you into our website, and you can look at our strategic plan, execution, analysis, and reporting. It's our SPEAR report. It's about 220 metrics of the stuff that we're doing in county government to try to do the things that make a difference in our community every day. So thank you very much for the opportunity to really frame this budget out. This is a different budget because it's got a 4-cent tax rate increase recommended. And so much of that is devoted to our public safety work that we're doing every day in this community to keep our community safe, as well as some of the bigger projects in this county that we need to get built and paid for and online. So with that, Serena, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you for being here tonight. And let's go ahead and get the questions and answers started. And I'll invite our 2 board members to come up because there may be questions that's better answered by our board.
Well, thank you. We'll let Mr. Richardson catch his breath. And I just want to share my admiration for speaking that long and so intelligently about so many different topics. Local government is so broad and we cover so much. So thank you, Mr. Richardson, for doing that in such a concise way. Okay, so I am going to stand with the mic and ask you if you have questions. We have a good number of people here, so I'll ask that we do one question at a time, and we'll try to get through everyone. And if we have a chance to go for round 2, we will do that as well. So raise your hand if you have a question, and I'll come to you with a mic. We also have questions from the audience who are watching virtually. So if Allison Rabel can turn on her mic and share a question that we received online, that'll be great.
Hello, everyone. The first question that we received online was, I think, when you were talking about the calls for service, and they asked, do all those calls include the community emergency trainings that have been happening in the community? I think that was maybe more about the fire rescue ones, but
what I
would like to talk about the calls for service.
Sure. Can you turn me back on? Let me give an overview of calls for service and fire rescue, and then I'm going to look while I'm giving the overview to Deputy Chief Puckett in case there are more specifics that David has specific to fire rescue. So specific to fire rescue, I think on the board we showed over 18,000 calls for service in a year. But I was interested in recently what's been going on. And since January 1 through March 8, 3,488 calls for service. EMS, and David can talk specifically about EMS calls, 2,521. Fire-related calls, 651. Motor vehicle rescue, 194. Hazmat, and David may want to talk for a minute, or one of his team members about the hazmat calls, 108, and then a catch-all category, I believe, of other, and about 14. Now, the specific question was, Allison, did this also count or take into account
the trainings that have been happening, emergency trainings?
Okay. David, could we get a microphone to David or one of his peers and let him say a little more about fire rescue and calls for service, please?
Thank you. Yeah. Again, David Puckett, Deputy Chief Fire Rescue. So our calls for service does not include anything outside of an emergency response. So any training, public education events, smoke detector installs, they are typically not included in those numbers. Child safety seat installs, any of that, the public sort of community engagement.
Great. Thank you.
In your presentation, you had towards the beginning the general revenues and then the general expenses in sort of a pie graph there.
Yes, ma'am.
And I was curious in that graph where the affordable housing falls, like which section of that does that fall in?
I'm going to ask our Deputy CFO, Andy Bowman. Andy, come up, if you would. And I'll let you hold that, and I'll let you answer that question.
I feel like we're going to sing a duet here, but that is part of the health and welfare section that was part of there. If we can go back to that slide where it was, I can point out exactly where it was.
You have to turn as I turn.
Yep. Oh. Well, yeah. Right there, that yellow piece is 7%. That would include the housing services as part of that.
Thank you.
Good. I'm sorry for the false online. I do not believe, because this is the general fund expenditures, we do have federal pass-through money that is also implicated in housing, quite a lot of it, actually. It was on that big list of housing monies. Federal pass-through money, because that is not part of the general fund in that way, would not be represented on here. I'm looking over it. Yes. So that is a significant tranche of money that isn't captured here because that's your housing vouchers.
That. Well.
I want us to be very clear when we say that it's $1.95 million. That's not $1.95 million for climate action. The climate action pool is $0.2 million, $200,000 that was appropriated in financial 2022. So it's, we just have to be really careful not to conflate environmental services, which are very important, with climate action. And I want to know how in this budget we are funding climate action because, there's massive cuts to climate funding from the federal government. I'm worried about how that will kind of shake out in the state government as well. I'm not trying to place the entire burden on funding all climate action on us locally, but we do need to be aware that we're going to have to shoulder a bigger burden to take care of our own resilience as well as our own emissions reduction. These services on this slide, they're showing a lot of past climate action, strategies like housing weatherization is, yes, climate action, but septic to sewer is not. Street sweeping is not climate action. So all I have seen in this budget for climate action is $200,000 in unallocated money. How are we specifically reducing our emissions through the budget this year?
Well, we've got the work that's in the climate action plan. I've got several staff from facilities and environmental services that are here tonight. If your point is we need more money in the climate action plan, I believe there's been a number of people in the community that have communicated to the board and said we'd like to see a $1 million investment in the climate action plan. I think our two board members can speak tonight to what they're trying to look at and how they're trying to work with the recommended budget and what are the challenges that they face. As I said early in the presentation tonight, we'll run out of opportunities and problems. We'll run out of money before we run out of opportunities and problems. We really do. And the obligations that we face this year are significant. The capital investments that we've made are significant. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Andrews, our chair.
Right. I understand the point too, but I think we have to look at a whole budget and recognize that there are a lot of things that affect our climate emissions, such as transit, and that's not represented here, but there are substantial investments into transit and the way we're dealing with the development and development areas and trying to densify rather than sprawl is also very significant for our climate footprint. In addition, our climate action plan has two prongs. It's both our emissions and our resilience. And when we talk about the fire positions and other safety positions, a lot of that is going to improve our resilience. So I do think that there are many areas of this budget that are focused on this, and I do think that climate action and climate resilience are still priorities for the county, for this board. But obviously, I also wish there were additional funds available for additional activities, but want to make sure we're aware of all the others as well.
I would just add that I do appreciate the point you're making, right? Let's call a spade a spade. Let's look and interrogate what we're actually spending that addresses this. I don't mean to in any way disparage the excellent point that Jim also made, right? Like, there are things that we do not think of as climate action that implicate climate action. I'm also sitting here in real time and wondering if any of our community partners that 30 some odd million of dollars go to are involved in whether I can imagine that we could construe work on ACUS, for example, ACIP, as being implicated in climate action because it reduces overall weatherization emissions. Our smart scale contributions are various transit projects that we work on. Those do all implicated, but you're right. I think it is incumbent on us as the political representatives of this county to be very honest about what we are and are not funding. And I think it is a fair characterization to say that the climate implementation money that we have set aside is about 0.2 million. Speaking for myself, I know about how much I think I can influence going into a budget cycle based on what we know our revenues are, what we know the state of the economy is, and what we know our obligations are. And I try and set very tangible goals. I think I've communicated pretty consistently and publicly what some of my goals were this budget cycle. And as someone who attended to them, that I did not achieve all of my most immediate goals. This ranked further on that list is another thing I was prioritizing, and we weren't able to make. That's the very simple and honest concern.
We have another online question. I'm going to paraphrase the intro and some of the question a little bit, I guess. They are in support of funding for police schools and supporting low-income families, but their assessment has increased, and their real estate tax payments have increased an average of 10% per year over the past 3 years. Their salaries have only increased by 2-3% per year. The question is, where does the county expect families to find this additional 7-8% from in their budgets to keep up with these constant increases? Yeah.
It's a very difficult situation for people to be in. Our average assessments, I guess, went up 5.1% this year, but individuals could have seen double-digit increases in their assessments. We have tried to continue to maintain programs like the emergency relief programs, the assistance to the elderly and disabled for tax relief, but I don't know that they do enough or reach enough people. But that's something that we have increased every year that I've been on the board to try to offset some of the additional burden. Otherwise, I would just harken back to what our county executive very ably said about how we are trying very hard to find ways to diversify our revenue. And that revenue diversification is intended to help take the burden off of particularly residential real estate. So
I understand. Just a few additional thoughts on this. First, I would say if you listen to us as we're up there on the dais grappling with questions of the budget, I think you would very quickly see that it is never lost on us that every method of taxation we have, every way we have meeting our obligations is in some way regressive, and is in some way extracting things from our own citizens who we are trying to provide services to. And we grapple very seriously with what is the least onerous, what is the one that is What is the method that is going to be most conscious of the people at that margin who really are going to be affected by a few $100s of increase? And I do believe we generally meet that bill. We are generally not in a position where our increases are seriously impacting the person who is right on the margins of that affordability. The one other thing, I just want to, this is the top line. The top line of, if I'm to explain the budget in 2 sentences, what do I say? We had obligations that were overwhelmingly generated by public safety, specifically, and this is not a problem, fire and rescue. 97 new fire and rescue hires since the new decade. Of those, 57 were done by federal grants. That is an extraordinary amount. And there's a very simple through line here. And I can tell you, does anyone here subscribe to Sean Tubbs' Substack, right? Last week, he had a news clipping from the Daily Progress today, 75 years ago. And the news clipping said, a delegation from Scottsville travels to the county during budget season to ask for additional funding for the volunteer fire program. And that was back when volunteerism was still at a high point. Since then, things have become more expensive. It has become harder to have people who have time in their day to volunteer, and our county, especially in the rural areas that are served by volunteer fire stations, is getting older. Volunteerism is down across the board, and the people who might fill those spots don't live here anymore. And our volunteer fire stations need to have that manpower replacement. Overwhelmingly, what is happening is we are having to pay for what we used to get for free. And that sucks. I don't like it. I would much rather we have a robust volunteer economy. I'd much rather we have a community where we have the capacity to volunteer. But that requires, frankly, building a kind of better world from the studs, building a place where we can have people who can live affordably throughout the county, have people who can raise a family on a 40-hour-a-week job, and then still have space either in one other adult in that house or themselves in their free time volunteer. That's not the community we live in right now. So I think something you see in this budget is we're trying to spit and shoot at the same time. We're trying to fund that urgent need of missing volunteerism that we used to rely on. And we're investing deeply into trying to build that economy that can support that future that we used to have.
Very much related to what you just said, Supervisor Pruitt, if you may like to keep the microphone for a second. Someone asked, they are curious if you could speak more about the decline of volunteerism. This was asked before you even said that. And how can we as a community help and where are volunteers most needed?
I'm not sure I have much more to say on this because this was really the talking point. But I mean, I would also say this is my prescription. This is the narrative I tell people. The job of a politician, really, you have to think what is our job versus what Jeff and county leadership does. I think a really key part of it has to be identifying what a coherent narrative is throughout the budget. That's what we're here to. We're here to kind of talk about the vision, how this plays into what we feel and experience as the public. And I do see this as a really essential piece of this, right? I see the decline of volunteerism as inextricably linked to a declining sense of community, which is linked to a whole host of problems, but really to me, deeply linked to wealth inequality. I think we've become a less communal place as a country because of wealth inequality. And that is a key avenue through which we can attack that. And I'm sure.
I'll just add, we have our strategic plan, 6 initiatives. One of them that in particular, I think I assisted be included in the second of those is resilient, equitable, and engaged community. And I think that community engagement, like tonight, is a big part of it. But also, I think, as we go forward, the county should look to ways in which we can further engage the public. And engaging the public will inevitably lead to opportunities for volunteers. And we certainly do have a lot of people in this community who volunteer for services for the county committees, Beth and Avon, or our host tonight, and many other advisory committees and other committees that helped with county services. We really appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Emily Smith. I'm an attorney with the Legal Aid Justice Center. The largest part of my work is eviction defense. And so I see folks that benefit from the Section 8 program and ACERP rental assistance. But I also see that that's not enough. The rents in the area, of course, have been going up enormously. We're also seeing a decline of naturally affordable housing like Cavalier Crossing or closing and being renovated to be luxury units. And of course, all of these problems cost a lot of money. And we were encouraged to see that there is going to be a dedicated affordable housing fund, and that's dedicated from the property tax increase. But I guess I'd like to hear more about how we've arrived at this number and how that is going to meet the needs of our community. The Legal Aid Justice Center and 50 other local organizations had submitted a sign-on letter that had recommended $10 million as appropriate to meet the need. Thank you.
I think for I'm sorry, you don't do that.
So I want to begin by just saying this is complicated, right? We've adopted as a board the budget, meaning standing up here, we are both speaking for the entire budget. And we had disagreements about how some of this money should be spent. I'm going to not try and get into that and speak to your question objectively on behalf of the whole, which is in this budget, we have tried very hard to find as much as we can to put toward the housing fund. And that comes at the understanding of when your main lever is property tax, inherently you are increasing the cost of housing to subsidize housing. You're increasing it at a different level. You're increasing it at a different quartile of our population, but you are necessarily increasing the cost of housing. And that is always a challenging question. And I think that is why you didn't see bolder movements, because it would have, to get to the ask of the letter, would have taken 2 more cents, right? 50% higher than the increase that we already ordered. That would have been challenging for members of the community. I think we would have had a bigger room here. That being said, I do recognize, at least so far, I've personally gotten more people asking for the budget to be raised than to be lowered, which is an unusual thing. And it's mostly on the avenue of the Housing Trust Fund. I will say the board has not planted this flag and walked away on this issue for this budget cycle. There is, I think, pending conversations we're going to have about maybe some more creative ways to skin this cat. There's a notion that I've been trying to work on for a while, and I was really excited to see Supervisor Galway also pick up this flag of seeing if there are more innovative ways that we might use the capital investment program to actually augment that, ways that we could configure our allocation of funds in the Housing Trust Fund that could be self-sustaining in a limited capacity. I do just want to be very clear from advocates, and I consider myself an advocate on this issue. I am concerned that sometimes the description of how the Housing Trust Fund will work is a little Pollyanna. Right? It is not a magic, we put $10 million in it, and then we're done, right? We put $10 million in it, and if we think that's the right amount, we put $10 million in it next year and next year. And that is an incredibly challenging thing for a community to do. That is a very significant portion of our budget. That's how much we're putting into it. And I think it's reasonable to question that. I am hopeful that through our collective working on how we might be able to do this in a more innovative way, that we can get towards something that accomplishes this a little more. And in the meantime, I'm really proud of the fact that we do actually have ongoing dedicated funding stream, right? That is better than we've had before. We've been relying on basically one-time funding, which I don't want to impugn any of the incredible work but it does sometimes feel like we have finished our obligations. Here's what is left behind, and this is what we can afford this year. So I realize that's not the most satisfying answer. Budget season is about unsatisfying answers.
I'll just add on to that, of course, that the 4.2 million in this budget for housing is as a budget item is one we've set, but not necessarily as a structure. So trust fund and things like that are discussions that are still coming. And we had a slide earlier that showed, significant on the order of 80 million in investment since 2019 in the housing space. A lot of that passed through, but a lot of it from county resources as well. At this point, since we had action last night yesterday afternoon that set the tax rate maximum for advertising here for the state, it is a question of now, well, okay, if we were to increase that, if we have the needs of the schools, we have the needs of these other things, and then that's the difficult place that the board is in right now. So,
okay, I know we have 3 questions from our online audience. We have one here. Allison, why don't you go ahead and
I'll do the online and while you're walking over there, and I will hand you guys the mic. Someone asked if some of the budget for employee wellness could be used for staffing shortages in schools. Increased staffing would balance out stress in schools.
I think from an equitable interpretive system, right? And I will look to our staff to correct me, but I think like when we're talking about employee wellness, we're talking about the very literal, tangible, pecuniary cost of healthcare, right? We are a self-insured county. We pay for our own healthcare for our staff, and those costs are rising as insurers. The way that we are tackling this is in part to improve preventative care, to improve ongoing maintenance, because by having an employee health clinic, which is a significant capital investment, it is easier. It is easier when your doctor is right next door and works for you in that sense. It is easier to have that ongoing care that will catch these significant issues. There is not really a way that strategy that is designed to deal with this very technical financial insurance cost thing could be reprogrammed to school staffing. I appreciate the point that's being made, but I think treating that as the 2 buckets to correlate a funding swap, I don't think actually gets at the solution there.
Hi, and I'd like to thank Supervisor Andrews for mentioning the schools. The composite index, which the state uses, is driven by real estate assessments and adjusted gross income in localities, both of which are skyrocketing in Albemarle County, which means the share that we're going to be able to get from the state moving forward is going to be reduced. We're only seeing 10% of the rate increase going to our local schools. They're already having a difficult time presenting a balanced budget to the county for adoption. And that's only going to get harder in the future. What steps are we going to take to make sure our schools and their capital improvements in particular are funded? This county finally, after 25 years, is building new schools. But they've got a backlog of, I think, $500 million with a B dollars in terms of what they're looking for from a capital campaign over the next 5 years. And I know that's a lot of money, and they know that they're not going to get all of that, but that's a real accurate statement of what the needs are for the schools. So where does the money come from to keep our schools at the level they are and to really improve what they're offering to our population?
I'm glad you mentioned the local composite index was something a little bit on the complex side, but recognition that that we're actually getting a lower state share than we've been getting in the past, in part because of increased assets in this community and the value, the wealth in this community is actually, in some sense, hurt our state share. But to go back to a political answer to your question, as County Executive mentioned, there is a legislation that has been passed to allow communities to put out a referendum for a 1-cent sales tax dedicated to capital improvements for schools. We don't know whether that legislation will be signed or vetoed and heard, but I don't, not particularly optimistic right now, but we hope to, at some point, that can be a tool to help us get to the backlog or capital needs in the schools. But there are also some borrowing capacity still in future years that will have to be looked to. But we certainly are aware of the problem. And we've had several meetings with the schools to discuss it. And very concerned. Thank you.
What I would say, and appreciate Chair Andrews' answer, what I would say to begin with is that our school CIP is the largest it's been in the history of Albemarle County. I believe I didn't have a slide on it tonight, but I believe it's somewhere, we're in the 120s, and I believe schools is around 180. Low 190? 189. Yeah, so we're just over $300 million. And so we will look for opportunities as we have opportunities with capacity, revenue capacity to do more. I'll also say that on the operational side, in the last 2 years, this year and the last year, our board has supported over $27 million of additional operating funds for schools. 27 in the last two budgets. In this one, 14.3. That gets you to 42 million in the last 3 years. Our per student funding is competitive across the Commonwealth. Our class sizes are low, and we're in the process of building 3 new schools. They present a needs-based budget. We're fully aware of that. And we are tied to the hip in partnership with them because we are committed as part of our vision to having excellent schools in Albemarle County. The superintendent, his cabinet, they have an excellent working relationship with us. Our 2 budget teams work hand in glove. So we're going to continue to work really hard for them I think we did with this recommended budget. I think we worked really hard for schools.
Fuller?
Very quick comment on this. I apologize. I had an extra thought. You will often hear counties talking about the different ways in which different state funding programs are discriminatory against their type of county. And it is often true. And so one thing I would raise is the state composite index formula, I think, is inherently biased in favor of more urbane localities and against rural localities, specifically because we do not collect the full assessed value on farmland, timberland, and things that are held under conservation. So the last one doesn't play into our state composite index because it actually reduces the real assessed value. But land that is held for agricultural use, which is frankly most open space you will see is receiving a land use tax exemption for agricultural work. We are not capturing the full value on. And when that's 95% of our land, that makes it very challenging for us to actually meet what the state is saying they're expecting us to accomplish with our land. I'm not saying this is a problem with our county's policy on land use. I'm saying this is a problem with the way the state assesses this. Because if Albemarle County is having problems, because while 95%, we have a tremendous amount of wealth in this part that we're assessing at full value in the urban center, where we are right now. Imagine what they're experiencing in Franklin County. Imagine what they're experiencing out in Wise. And they're hurting much more than we are trying to fund schools. And so I see this as just a bad system that the state uses.
This community member asks, what is the county doing to attract business and industry to the area, and what is included in the budget for these actions?
We had a whole slide on that. So this is going to be the Economic Development Fund, right? We have a whole office, a whole Economic Development Authority, a whole branch of our government that exists specifically to help attract business to this county. And that doesn't necessarily even have to be in things we're seeing on the budget. This is something I want to highlight, right? So we have $3 million in the Economic Development Fund, and we're plunging another $1 million in it. This helps us do kind of matching incentives. It's normally going to be matching, right? We're going to be banking this on the idea that there's private money guaranteed. Normally there's state money, and it's also going to help open something. This always comes with kind of the understanding that the net for the county will be secure, right? We are going to invest $1 million on the understanding that in 3 years we will get $5 million in sort of, right? That's always the math we do. The one other tool is we can do synthetic TIFs, tax increment financing. This is basically future tax abatements. It is a way to upfront pay for something through tax revenue that we don't have. It's spooky black magic that counties do, but this is another tool that doesn't even come out of the budget per se. It comes out of next year's budget and the year after that's budget, but we never see it, so we pretend it doesn't happen. All to say, we have a lot of tools in our chest. We have a lot of arrows in the quiver for how we're accomplishing economic development, and we have a really good, because, I mean, frankly, we have county governments do a lot of things. You can use a lot of different positive adjectives to describe a county government, and you can only be the best at one thing. If I were to describe the thing that the county government is best, we are deeply professional. This is very clearly something that the county government has delved so much power and energy and concentration into building a highly professional and skilled staff. That pays dividends in a lot of ways, but specifically what I'm highlighting is our relationship with the state. We have an incredibly strong working relationship with the state that helps us really, despite being a little blue dot out here in an administration that doesn't always like blue dots, it helps us really pull down a lot of money, helps us really pull down a lot of assistance in supporting our strategic priorities, which do often align with what the state is trying to accomplish. Do you have anything you want to add?
And I think this is the last question. I did not ask the full question from the first community member who asked a question, and I apologize for that. So I'm just going to read this. So this person says, my real estate taxes are being charged based on unrealized gains. Therefore, I am being billed based on the county's assumption that my home is worth $150,000 more than my actual mortgage is worth. The federal government doesn't tax people based on unrealized gains. Why does the county feel they have the right to do so?
So I'd like for Jacob Sumner just to take a second as our CFO and talk about our reassessment process, please.
Sure. Jacob Sumner, Chief Financial Officer for the county. So we are governed by the state code of how we assess our properties in the county. We have to assess those at fair market value. And so that means we are looking at the properties in the county. We're looking at the sales that have happened in the year, and we're comparing that and using those sales to identify what the market is, and then using those comparables to assess the homes and businesses throughout the county. So there is a very detailed process that our real estate office goes through from a training perspective, from a systems perspective, from an industry perspective. There is a very well organized assessors association, and that's not just locally, but that's nationally and internationally, that has these standards that are set. But we're really governed by the state code, and state code says we have to assess the properties at fair market value, and so we do that on an annual basis.
Does anyone who we haven't heard from have a question they'd like to ask?
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I just wanted to sort of piggyback on that to say that, you know, the February median home sale in Albemarle County was $533,000. So you are currently asking those people, like the person online who's asking the question, to make up the difference for affordable housing, thereby making it less affordable for them. And I just want to make sure that the money that we're putting towards affordable housing is going to go deeper into research about how we can make more land available for development to drastically increase the number of houses, because that is what is going to make housing more affordable in Albemarle County.
Just thank you for that. And certainly it's something that, you know, we want to make sure that we use the available land in the development area wisely, efficiently, and look for the best developments that we can get, with affordable housing as a significant component under our current housing incentives. Is that it? Not before I get it off. I've got to call out. we are so fortunate in this county to have leadership like our county executive, Jeff Richardson. I don't get to say this, but, we are aware that throughout this region, he is looked to by leaders throughout Virginia, North Carolina, and other places as a teacher, as an expert, one of the highest caliber of people that I've ever had the chance to work with, and we're very fortunate to have him here at Albemarle County. So, thank you.
Thanks.
So, wrap up. Go ahead. Okay, so we have no more questions online. Serena's telling me let's wrap up. And so, first of all, thank you to the community members that are here tonight. You have some really good questions. There's some really hard questions. And I think your questions really begin to set the stage for how hard the work is for our local elected officials. They have hard jobs, and they know that. They live this stuff every week, and it's hard work. We appreciate you being here. Thank you. For the people online, and I appreciate the people who tuned in. I appreciate the questions that Ms. Rabel fielded to go with the questions that were live. Thank you for caring enough to dial in tonight. Thank you for asking the questions that you have. We have additional town halls that we've scheduled. They're on our website. And if you would like to attend a town hall, we'd love to see you. We'll be in other areas of the county all through the week for the next couple of weeks. So thank you for being here. And I believe that Serena wants me to say, click on this, share feedback about this event. She wants you to do that. And I really want you to chase someone down tonight if you're interested in our SPEAR report to learn more about what we do on a day-to-day basis. The people around the edge of this room are what make Albemarle County move and produce what we produce every day. We'll have other people at other events. We'll see some of these people at all 7 events, but we got good people at work in this community. They live in this community. They deal with the same issues you do, and they care very much. So thank you for being here this evening. I really appreciate it. Have a safe evening.